My son's name was Tommy. What I remember is particularly his hair. It was very thick, brown hair. The nurse made a comment like, "This baby has the nicest hair I've seen." That's just something that always stood out to me, just physically, just what I remember from him is his hair and how much he looked like me and his mom.
Welcome to Still a Part of Us, a place where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Winter.
And I'm Lee. We are grateful you joined us today. Please note that this is a story of loss and has triggers.
Thanks to our lost parents who are willing to be vulnerable and share their children with us.
If you're listening to this podcast, just know that on our YouTube channel there are pictures and videos that are related to the stories that are being shared.
Subscribe and share it with a friend that might need it and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us.
Tom, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming and talking to me. It's been great to talk and get to know you. And now I'm excited to get to know you and your son Tommy. Please start in with your story. How long have you known your wife Kirby? Correct?
Yes. First off, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it and happy to be here. I've been married to my wife Kirby for about 4 years. I'll just kind of jump right into the birth story of Tommy. So we got married, like I said, 4 years ago. We waited a year to start trying for our first son or first kid, put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And she was fortunately able to get pregnant fairly quickly after like a month or so. So we were very blessed with that. During the pregnancy, she had a lot of morning sickness, and it was a really difficult pregnancy, to be honest. She pretty much had morning sickness throughout the whole pregnancy, and she had to go to bed early, and she was working full time as a teacher too. So a lot of long days and then coming home, going right to sleep. So it was a really difficult pregnancy for us, and especially her, and she's, you know, like the strongest person for going through that. Around 37 weeks, she was at school teaching and she called me that she wasn't feeling movement. So we went in to see the doctor and get a sonogram, or not get a sonogram, just feel up, see if we get a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
So we went in and we were extremely nervous, scared. But, I've never really had anything too tragic directly affect me. So I'm never thinking worst case scenario. I'm always thinking, this is going to be, fine. Just she's a little worried, getting close to the end. So we go in
No,
and
you said this was a Thursday?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Did you say this was a Thursday?
I believe it was a Thursday. My wife knows every detail, every exact detail. But I think it was a Thursday.
And about what time on that? In the afternoon, in the evening, or?
Yeah, I believe it was afternoon as she
Okay.
was getting off of work. So as the kids were leaving, she taught elementary school.
Yeah.
So when she got off, went to the doctor, and luckily they found a heartbeat. So we were relieved. But I thought it was kind of weird. I was saying, can we get a sonogram just to verify? Like, she's not feeling any movement. What's going on? I kind of am never really aggressive, but I made it a point to kind of push for this because, she's the mom and she knows what's going on best. And she said she wasn't feeling movement. So I felt like we needed a sonogram to make sure everything was okay in there. But the doctor said, no, it's fine. A heartbeat's there. Don't worry about it. And she kind of said she's not qualified to get one, basically. I think there was insurance procedures involved and all that stuff, which looking back on it, like that's a huge regret. I should have just, even pushed harder. But I mean, they basically said we couldn't do that. So we went home, we felt, better, happy. I think we went over her parents, got dinner. I think the next day, which would be Friday, the same thing. She wasn't feeling any movements. She was really worried. And I was like, we just got the heartbeat yesterday. It's all fine. And then we agreed, I think it was Friday night, we insisted we go into the hospital. We called them and they said, come in, get another heartbeat. We can even do a sonogram. So we go to a hospital, St. Agnes in Baltimore. Driving there, like I feel so stupid looking back on this, but I thought there was no shot that, you know, anything was wrong with
Yeah.
our baby. We didn't know if it was a boy or girl at the time. So I thought there was nothing wrong. We just saw the heartbeat yesterday, just less space, less movement. So he's probably just not moving as much.
How far along in the pregnancy is this point?
Yeah, it was about 37 weeks, 37 and a half weeks.
Okay.
So a couple weeks before the due date.
Yeah.
And then I remember in my mind, I'm thinking about like fantasy basketball or something. I'm thinking I play FanDuel every once in a while, and she's like worried sick, and I'm just driving thinking, oh, everything's fine, and I'm not even have two thoughts about it. Like looking back, I feel so guilty about that. But
It,
I never thought in a million years this would happen.
yeah, it never
Then we,
passes through your head. It never that thought never passes through your head.
oh yeah, I thought worst case is, we'd have to get him out soon, or I mean, that looking back on it, that probably would have been best case. But at the time, you're thinking like, everything's fine. So then we get there. It was like such a weird experience to say the least. When we got there, we checked in. I think there was issues finding her ID or something.
Mm.
Um, or there's some issues with the system. I forgot exactly what it was. We finally got her checked in. My wife, as you can imagine, is like a nervous wreck. I'm trying to keep it calm, try to be the one that's going to say everything's going to be okay. And then they finally get us back into a room, and then they do the heartbeat thing. And I just will never forget this. They couldn't find it at
Mm.
first. And like my heart, like it's just something undescribable. And thank God most people don't have to go through something like this. But it was just like it all hit me at once because I wasn't really thinking about it leading up to this. But right when they couldn't find the heartbeat, it's just like my world came crashing down. My heart just completely dropped. And then I just like froze up. I didn't know what to say. So I managed to get some words out saying, can we get a more intense scanner or whatever to see? She goes, yeah, let me go get another one to see if we can find it. Maybe he's turned around or something like that. So I'll never forget this. It's just me and my wife in this cold, quiet room after they told us they can't find the heartbeat. And they're going to go find this machine that another nurse is using to verify that they can't find the heartbeat. And we're just sitting there like, what the hell is going on? Like, I remember it was like the weirdest feelings. I felt like I wanted to punch the wall, but I couldn't move. So it was just like, I had to keep telling my wife, "Hey, I think they're going to find it. They think everything's going to be okay." She was asking questions like, "What do we do next?" And I'm like, "Let's just make sure
Yeah.
we can find it and go from there." So it was like the longest 30, 40, however minutes it was. It felt like 5 hours just waiting for them to come
Yeah.
back with the heart rate machine. I had to go out and like yell, not yell, but like I had no idea what to do. So I had to go out
Yeah.
to the nurses and be
Yeah.
like, "Where is it? This is out of control. They just told us they couldn't find the heartbeat." So after it felt like forever, they came back in with the, second machine. And then the same thing, they couldn't find it. And right there, was just it, when I 100% realized, like, what the heck? So he passed away, he's dead. And like some questions I asked, I said, what do you mean you can't see it? And I remember the nurse was pretty, I think you have to be direct.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the best experience at the hospital, but she said, look, see this little dot? It's not flickering. That means you can't see his heartbeat. That means he's not alive anymore. She was like so direct. And I was just like, what? My wife's a wreck. I'm a wreck. And then I asked, like, I have no idea. I'll never expect this in a million years. So my questions are so basic. Like, what's the next step? What do we do? Do we, you know, get the baby out? Like, like I didn't know that she had to go through the birth and
Yeah.
everything like a normal pregnancy. I mean, it makes sense now, but at the moment, like I wasn't even thinking that. And she's like, "Oh yeah, we gotta induce her. She's got to get the baby out." I'm like, "Wait, so she's got to give birth to a dead baby? Like this is going to be the most traumatizing experience of all time. Like, how can we even live after this and go through this together? Like, this is going to be, mess us up in the head forever." And
Yeah.
She goes, yeah, but that's the only way to do it. And she gave us the option if we wanted to go home and, sleep and come back. And me and my wife looked at each other and said, no chance. Like, let's get him out now. Like, we wanted to move forward and just like,
Yeah.
we were so confused and we didn't know what was the right thing to do and say. And then I swear the hardest calls I've ever made in my life was we called her parents and I had to tell them on the phone. And Kirby, my wife, was crying too. And we had to tell them that we lost Tommy, or we didn't know it was Tommy then.
Hmm.
Like I said, we didn't know boy or girl, but we had to tell them we were at the hospital. We couldn't find the heartbeat, and the baby's passed away. And just the reaction from them, and they're immediately just said, "We'll be right there." And the same with my parents telling them that. I just will never forget their reactions and just their tone of voice and just like no one knows what to say there. They're just like, "We'll be there right away."
Yeah.
Um,
Now,
so
quick
both
question.
my parents and that, yeah, go ahead.
About what time of day, and then how close are your parents and how close are Kirby's parents? Was it pretty quick for them to get there or not?
So this was still like Friday evening.
Friday evening.
I think it was a long experience in the hospital when we got there. We
Yeah.
got there like Friday 5 o'clock, and this was probably around like 10 p.m.
Yeah.
I might be off a couple minutes or whatever. My wife knows the exact details more than me, but um, yeah, her parents live about 20 minutes from the hospital, and so do my parents. They live
Okay.
like right next to each other, basically. We all grew up in the same area, same basic neighborhood. So both of them came right away. I think her parents got there first, and they came in, um, hugged their daughter, and I think her sisters came, and yeah, just we didn't. No one knew what to say. It was just kind of like no one's ever been in this spot before, and then my parents came, same thing, and I think we came up with a plan. I think I'll never forget this. They sent her to a room. The plan was to induce her, later that night, I believe, and Tommy, or our son or kid at that point, we didn't know, to be born, after she was induced, which would be like the next day.
Hmm.
So we take her to her own room, and it's like the most, as you can imagine, depressing thing. They printed out this like flower and they put it on the door about like, this is a grieving mom. She lost her baby. And I was just like, this is just, I can't believe this is happening. Like, what is going on? It felt like the worst dream ever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you just can't imagine it's just happening to you. So then we get her set up, and I will never forget this. They came in like right away. Like, they had some mean nurses there. Like, you're just going through this traumatic experience. And there was one nurse there that was really nice that I'll talk about in a second. But all the others, like, they came to you asking, like, what do you want to do for a funeral? We have a garden out back where we bury all the baby's ashes. And I'm just like, what do I don't know what to say to this. Like, I
Yeah.
guess we'll have a funeral. Like, it's so new to me that
Yeah. Yeah.
now it all makes sense looking back, like how we should have approached it. But there's so much I learned, of course. But at the moment, you're trying to take it all in, and they're asking you these questions about insurance and about like funeral arrangements and about like, I don't know. So that was very emotional. So that, I think later that night, it was like as you can imagine, longest night ever. I can't even remember when she got induced. I think it was that night, like maybe early morning on Saturday, like 2 a.m. or something. And then as she's induced, it's like you're sitting there in that room thinking, like, you got a tour of the hospital weeks back
Yeah.
as like, this is where you'll be staying when you give birth. And then you're in that room for this situation. You're like, wow, this is like the most depressing thing ever. We just sit there after she was induced, and just, it was the worst feeling ever. You're just sitting there like, we're just waiting to give birth to a child, our first child who's passed away. It's going to be the hardest thing ever. It's already been hard. And so she starts dilating, it gets farther along. To be honest, it's, I lost track of time. I
Yeah.
mean, it just felt like one long period in there.
And that's
So I
understandable.
think,
Yeah.
like I said, she would know better about the exact timing and things like that. But she was induced, and then it was that Saturday, I believe. It was January 6th, 2018. that our son Tommy was born. And in the birth room, I believe my parents made my uncle and brothers and stuff wait out in the hallway, and her mom, dad, and one of her sisters was in the birth room with us. And I mean, I've never seen anyone as strong as my wife being able to do something like that. But with the support of her family and just me being there, and that we had a really nice nurse that finally showed up. It was like a blessing from God. And she was so nice to my wife, so sweet to everybody. And she walked us through everything. So she gave birth that, I believe it was that night, January 6th on Saturday. And I'll never forget this. As I'm holding my wife's hands, I just am breaking down crying. And the nurse says something like, "Oh, there's his hair." Like we didn't know it was a boy or girl. And then she says, "There's his hair. It's beautiful hair. It's thick, long. Oh my gosh, mommy, daddy, he's so handsome." I'm like, "It's a boy?" And like he comes out and you just have that small hope that
Yeah.
this, the sonogram or whatever was wrong and it was gonna be a miracle. He's gonna start to cry, but it's just I'll never forget it. It was just like dead silence.
Yeah.
Like when he came out and you're just hoping for a cry, even though it's like a long shot. Like my wife, me, after she gave birth, are just, hugging each other, holding each other's hands. They take him, clean him up, and then they bring him back. Most beautiful boy ever. You could tell he looked like me and my wife. Like I said, he had that hair, the sweetest thing, beautiful lips, and 37 and a half weeks. It was holding
Yeah.
our son was passed away in our hands. So it was like I I keep trying to find words to describe it. It's just you can't. I just remember him being heavy and me thinking like, I cannot believe this is happening to us. Like, what are the odds? What are the chances? But at the same time, I did appreciate holding my first son in my hands.
Hmm.
It was still weird because it was cool feeling that weight. Like, there he is, our son. So we spent time with him. And
No.
at the same time, we don't know what to do. Like, no one's coaching us through this. So me
Yeah.
and my wife and family are just kind of making it up as we go. And they asked us for pictures. And at the time we were like, pictures? I don't know. That seems kind of, but we got them done. We had a company come in. Now I lay me down to sleep, I think was the name of it.
Yeah.
And they did a fantastic job. And I'm so glad we got pictures done because that's what we have now to look at and remember us of our first son. So we got the pictures taken. They came in and did that. We held them for an hour. I think they took him out, brought him back in for another couple hours. Like I said, my timing might be all off. It was just one big blur, but it was very tough, as you can imagine, but it was peaceful at the same time. So it's very you'll never experience something unless you go through
Yeah.
this, and that all the parents and families that have been through this know that feeling I'm talking about. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was like 2 parts of it. Like, you felt at peace that your first son was born, first kid, but at the same time, you're like, "What could have been? This is supposed to be the happiest day of our life,
Hmm.
and it's now, like, the worst," but yet it's still cool because, he was in our hands and everything,
Hmm.
so, um
Now,
so yeah, it's kind of the birth story right there.
now, tell me a little bit about Tommy. How big was he? You said he had a lot of hair. What other features? You said he had beautiful lips. Did he have big hands? Did he have big feet? Was he petite? Because at
Um, I
36,
think he was
37 weeks.
yeah, 36 weeks, I think he was around about 8 pounds. Like I
Whoa.
said, my wife would know the exact ounces to
Yeah.
that too. I think it was 8 pounds and a few ounces. So pretty big for 37 weeks.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, beautiful hands. Everything was perfect. It was so weird. It was beautiful face. He looked like a healthy, beautiful baby that
Yeah.
was like a miracle. Him just the way, like, it's your first time experience birth too. So you don't,
Yeah.
the first time we experienced birth was a stillbirth. And like the miracle birth is so fascinating. So it's like you're taking that in plus the fact that he's has no heartbeat. So it
Hmm.
was like such a mind boggling experience. But
Yeah.
yeah, he had a just everything was normal and healthy. Beautiful hands, feet, long, and he good weight too. So it wasn't,
Yeah.
a skinny baby that was he looked like he was strong and everything. He just had no heartbeat. So, and he had good skin color too. I mean, wasn't like, I don't know, wasn't blue or anything. He
Yeah.
just came out looking healthy. Just had no heartbeat, which was so hard.
Just a beautiful baby. So now let's talk about how long were you at the hospital with Tommy? Were you there? Were you able to keep him in your room? Where did they tell us about that experience?
Yeah. So he was able to stay in our room for some time, and it just you don't know what to do in that situation. Like you love him and you want to hold him, but at the same time you're so heartbroken. So he was there with us, I believe, for a few hours, and we got pictures. And then my parents came in and held him. Of course, her parents were there for the birth, and her sister, they held him. I believe a few other people in the family came in and held him, which was great. I mean, I wish I could, looking back, invited everyone in our family
Yeah.
to come meet him and hold him because that was the only opportunity. But that was so emotional, seeing your in-laws and your parents hold a baby, knowing that they had a grandson too, and he was passed away. But at the same time, it was pretty cool seeing them hold, one of your first child. But I mean, just everything was, yeah, so
Yeah.
deep and emotional. But yeah, they held him, and then the nurse took him away after a few hours. And I think we saw him one more time. They brought him back in like an hour later to see him one more time to get more pictures. And that was pretty much it. I mean, looking back on it, I wish we probably held him for, 6 hours, but
Yeah.
at the moment you just don't know what to do, and you're just so many thoughts are going through your head, and it's so emotional that you have your guard up and you're yeah. But I'm so grateful that we were able to hold them, get pictures, have family hold them, and just spend time with them because that was some of the best hours of my life, or the best hours of my life, is being apart and holding him and being with family holding him. So yeah, we got some more pictures. He went away and they did an autopsy, so they had to start performing that. They also, I forgot to mention this, they cleaned them up, dressed them up for the pictures, which was
Mm.
awesome. They gave him this cute little hat, this blanket that we still have today.
Yeah, that's
We
special.
call it Tommy's blanket. And we actually, I believe, use it for we have two sons now that we used it for. But yeah, it's pretty cool because you get these memorabilia stuff like his clothes he was wearing, hats, his ID badge when he was born, just all sorts of stuff. But
Mm.
this nurse was extremely helpful. She walked us through the whole process. Thank God she came in. Like I said, it was a blessing from God. She came in and just walked us through what to do. And she's done it, unfortunately, a lot of times. So helped us guide us through getting pictures and all that, or else we probably would have no idea what to do if
Yeah.
pictures were appropriate or what have you.
Yeah.
So went through that whole process of spending our last moments with them. And in that last time, you're going to see them is, I mean, the birth, of course, is really deep and hard, but that last moment that, like, this is my last time I'm going to be holding him before they take him away, that's hard to describe as well. I mean, that's just, I was breaking down in tears every second. And I never cry, of course. I just couldn't control it. I just couldn't stop crying.
Hmm.
So yeah, they took him away and they had to perform an autopsy to see what the cause was, to make sure everything was okay with my wife and see what the reasoning for his passing was. So then it was just helping my wife recover. Our priest came in, which was an awesome, huge help. I forgot to mention that he blessed Tommy before they took him away and
Oh.
said a prayer, and that was huge. And I'm so glad that we got that done, and that helped us kind of not come to terms, of course, but it kind of made the goodbye like a little easier, knowing that he was blessed by the priest, and the priest said some prayers. I'm probably leaving out a little bit of detail, but basically
I was going to say
Took them away.
it's such a traumatic experience. It's hard to remember everything. So
Yeah, and I remember, like, no one like, your family doesn't know what to say. I didn't know what to say to my wife. It's just a lot of silence, a lot of crying, not much talking, but our priest pulled me aside, and I think either my parents or her parents mentioned, like, he talked to Tom, um, pull him aside and talk to him. So we went in the next room, and we had a great I mean, a good conversation. Wasn't a great because, we
mhm.
just lost our son, of course, but he answered a lot of questions I had, and some of the early questions I had were, I thought I was being punished, like, I thought God was punishing me, and he was explaining to me that's not how it works. God does nothing but good. You're not going to be punished. This isn't about that. So some of these guilt and feelings I had, he helped me talk through, and that was a huge
A
support
blessing.
that would
Yeah.
help me be better for my wife, and that was a big moment in the whole experience.
It's almost impossible to know what to say in that situation. It as a husband and as a father and trying to console your wife, it is it's just it's just a horrible situation. So,
For sure.
uh,
So yeah, I don't know if you have any more questions, but basically we had a funeral service. It was great because since that's your son, you don't
yeah,
that's the last thing I wanted to be doing was planning a
yeah,
funeral for him. Like that's so we're already like a wreck and emotional, and I don't think I could have done that myself. So I was just so fortunate. I think her dad and my dad and just kind of put together the arrangements and handled everything. I think her dad, uh, you know, took care of expenses, of course, and just took it off our plate, which was awesome.
yeah,
So I could be there for my wife and not have to make calls. Arranging a funeral for us, my first son.
yeah,
Um, but then, yeah, we think we stayed there for a couple more days. And I mean, it's just the longest days ever. You just
yeah,
feel trapped in that room. You
yeah.
just keep staring at the clock. You just want to get out of there. And I remember, I think the NFL playoffs were on, and I'm a huge sports fan. I couldn't, of course, watch them because I have these thoughts going through my head like, what if Tommy was a football player? Or what
Mhm.
if, like, I feel like I couldn't do anything in life because I related it back to Tommy. So, as simple as watching TV, like a TV show, there'd be kids on it, or I'd just be like, this is too depressing. I don't know how I'm able to live my life because everything I relate is back to what could have been,
What could
and
have been?
I possibly could have prevented this.
Yeah,
Just the guilt I had. But after a couple of days, we went home. I went out, got my wife's car, picked her up at the front, and I mean, you just keep getting hit by these traumatic experiences. So you're supposed to be leaving the hospital with a baby in your hands and the car seat. And
yeah,
so I'm picking her up, and we basically we have nothing but except our clothes and, toiletries. And that ride home was the most quiet, depressing rides ever. I mean, driving so slow, I'm just like, this is really happening. I'm going home. We're going home with no baby.
yeah.
Got home. I think one of her sisters set up our basement, and my one of my brothers took my dog to his house,
Mhm.
so I didn't have to have any commitments and worry about letting them out, feeding them. And I felt like I would have broke down seeing something as simple as my dog because knowing that him and my son could have had a good relationship and growing up together. So took that out of the way. Our family was great. They kind of set up the basement for us with blankets, beds, a refrigerator, drinks. Went down there, and basically that was our safe spot. We stayed down there for weeks. Work gave me off for a couple weeks, which was
That's
good.
nice.
Yeah, so the only time I felt good was when I slept. So I'd sleep 10, 12-hour days. And, when you wake up in the morning, you would just want to stay asleep. So I would just lay there, acting like I was asleep
Mhm.
because you just didn't want to take on another day without them.
Yeah,
Um, so it was quite the experience just living in the basement for a couple weeks. Um, my Someone brought us over a cookie cake, I remember, and some of our friends brought us over some food, which was great. We didn't have to worry about making food or anything. But I remember I just ate this cookie cake like every single day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner because like I didn't really care. I just checked out. I was trying to be supportive for my wife. Her mom was there, which was being a huge help for us. She was
Mhm.
like waiting on us hand and foot. So she was there for her daughter, and that gave me the opportunity just to kind of get myself under control and
Yeah.
kind of check out. And that was great. I just liked being down there. It was like our safe zone. Then after a couple weeks, we had some people come over, talk to us that had child loss before, and they helped us out. A couple other, family friends came over and gave us some, inspiring stories about similar experiences they had.
Mm.
We got involved with the church. We had, therapy there, and we had group sessions, which helped us. Um, we had a neighbor at the time whose brother went through this similar experience, and they came over and talked to us. So a lot of good support and a lot of resources we reached out to. It kind of helped us, see that, although this is the worst thing ever, there is some hope for the future,
Mhm.
and we just got to keep pushing for that future of remembering Tommy and making the world a better place because of him. So
Yeah.
what my wife and her family and all of us came up with was creating acts of kindness on the 6th of every month,
Mhm.
because he passed away, or he was born stillborn on the 6th of January. So to this day, over the last 3 years, every 6th of every month, we have an act of kindness day where we get texts from our family and friends for, something nice they did that day,
Oh, that is so wonderful.
in honor of Tommy. So, like, we get texts like donated to a food bank, or I gave, a gift card to my friend, or I bought my friend Chick-fil-A for lunch, or that's how we remember him and kind of make the world a better place because of him. So that was a great idea. I think it was my wife and her family who thought of it, and I'm just so glad we do that every month because
That is
it helps you
amazing.
remember them,
Yeah.
makes you better people, makes the world a better place by kind of passing. Because I know he would have been the nicest, kindest, sweetest boy. So this still makes an impact, without him physically being here, but
Yeah.
it keeps his spirit alive here and keeps us remembering him. So we do that every 6th of the month to kind of remember him by.
Just so beautiful. That is so wonderful and so beautiful. And year round, you are honoring and remembering Tommy. So that's
Yeah, just one more thing I
uh huh.
thought I'd mention is going back to work. Like this whole experience, you don't think you're this strong until you go through it. I now realize my wife is the strongest person in the world because she gave the birth, she was pregnant with him throughout these 9 months, and she had that connection which I had with him, but she had that physical connection. So my hardest challenge after, of course, we left the hospital was being able to go back to work.
Hmm.
Like that day just kept coming, like, oh my, 5 days till I have to go back to work, 4 days. And you don't want to face anyone in life again. You just kind of want to
Hmm.
stay in that basement. So that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to see anybody because, that question would come across like, what happened? Or, how's the baby? Or so I just wanted to avoid it and just like sleep the rest of my life. But then you get some motivation from some family, friends, like, and from yourself and from your wife, like, this is what you got to do. Tommy's still with us. He's up in heaven. And, you know, he'll bless us with brothers and sisters. So you got to do it for him. You got to do it for them. You got to do it for your wife. So I took, some time. I started writing down in a journal, which helped big time. Just some of the feelings I've always wanted to remember. And just prep myself for that day when I went back to work, which was extremely emotional and hard. And my first day back, it was like a corporate meeting in McLean, Virginia. So I literally didn't get to ease back in. I just got thrown back into the fire. And like it was an all day meeting. I'm just sitting there trying not to burst into tears. Um, of course, I made it through it, but you know, another one of the hardest days of my life for sure. But just going back to work in general, knowing your wife's still at home. Her
Yeah,
mom was with her, so I felt a little better.
that's
But
good.
I mean, just being at work again after losing your son is, I mean, hopefully not many people have to experience that feeling because I don't wish that on anybody.
Yeah. Tom, thank you so much. Is there anything else uh, in the birth of your son Tommy that you would like to mention, or
Let me think. I'm sure I'm leaving stuff out. This is just
and
top of mind, but
and
um,
don't you worry. This is, you know, oral history is what we ourselves remember through our emotions and through our challenges. So, you
I think
know,
the last thing I bring up is what really helped us was we might talk about this a little more detail later, but
uh-huh,
a big day for us when we first made it out of the basement was going to the mall during the day when it was pretty empty. And we wanted something to remember him by. So
uh-huh,
I had thoughts of getting a tattoo. I like, what is a perfect, something I can wear, or, he'd be, shown that other people that this is my son. This is what I want to remember him with
mhm,
this symbol. So we went to the mall and I bought really nice necklace, not one of those cheap ones that gets rusty. I bought one of the ones that, hundreds of dollars that would last me a lifetime. Got it inscribed to say Tommy Jr. and then the date, which was January 2018. My wife got a necklace too, and she got bracelets and some other stuff like that. But that day going to the mall and doing that was the first step in actually like, hey, this isn't like too bad because we're out here, we're doing something, and you made you feel good about yourself, like getting something for him
yeah,
and that you could remember and show off to people to remind you of his son or your son for the rest of your life. So that was a big day for us, just that experience. And I just made a huge difference getting out and doing that for sure.
yeah. The hardest thing is to get out, but that is the best thing to do. So, well, thank you so much. Thank you so much.